Hi everyone, I'm really sorry that I can't present this live today. Unfortunately, I'm working at the local election, but I'm really excited to share some of my key takeaways from CSW69 and hear from everyone else afterwards how it went for them. So, a quick overview. Um, this year marked 30 years since the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, and that identified 12 key areas where urgent action was needed. And that's really broad, from the economy to armed conflict to health and education. So it was a really interesting year in terms of lots of topics were being discussed and looking at where progress had or hadn't been made. For me personally, this was also my first year attending in person, which was a really exciting experience. What we have to address, though, is that the session was definitely marked by this consensus that at the moment we are facing a global rollback of women's rights. There was definitely kind of acknowledgement of the challenging political situation that was going on at the moment. And I think at times like this, CSW is incredibly important in civil society coming together and really working together to deliver action. So my focus at this year's conference was digital harms online safety, and this ties in with NCW's focus on the Online Safety Act recently, and there's also a recent government report about regulating online pornography. So the first theme that struck me was technology facilitated gender-based violence, TFGBV, which refers to online harms including harassment, grooming, sexual exploitation, deepfakes, and the spread of misogynistic content. And it was evident across events I attended, whether they were based on TFGBV or not, that this is a growing global challenge and urgent action needs to be taken, with particularly a bold collaborative approach needed, and that involves tech companies. One issue is the scale and severity of the problem. It's rapidly increasing, and young people are now becoming, as well as victims, perpetrators. I think that's important to address. And the World YWCA's event on GBV raised this notion that digital spaces just aren't designed with women's safety in mind, which I think was a really powerful statement that we need to take forward. In a more kind of positive light, there were initiatives that I thought were really interesting and something that we could take inspiration from moving forward. So Canada, the YWCA Canada came up with a initiative called the Block Hate Campaign, which is a 4-year project, and they've created a research survey addressing online hate exposure in Canada and have consequently come up with initiatives and workshops and resources for young people in how to navigate the online landscape. And then the World YWCA has come up with a storytelling guide, which is basically about survivors of online hate or TFGBV reclaiming narratives to become advocates and advocating for themselves. And they've also developed a feminist consultation methodology guide, which is about creating more feminist research and kind of using a feminist lens on data collecting, which I think is particularly relevant. So I'll quickly show you as well one of the very nice resources that I found, and I think really addressing the issue of TFGBV and online harms at the moment. So another theme that goes quite hand in hand with the last one is extreme pornography and violence against women. And this was again a recurring theme at CSW69, particularly in addressing online harm. And there was this very strong link made between extreme pornography and violence against women and girls. And it was made evident across multiple sessions by survivors and experts that extreme online pornographic content isn't neutral but plays a very active role in sustaining exploitation, misogyny, and fueling gender-based violence, particularly among young people, and kind of sustaining really unhealthy relationship ideas. So a very interesting individual was Gemma Kelly from the Centre to End All Sexual Exploitation in the UK, and I've just put them there on the screen for you. And she really highlighted the harms of this extreme online sexual content, particularly in normalising strangulation, aggression and trauma, and the stats she gave on hospitalisation, trauma in the UK were frankly shocking. I think particularly for NCW, this is really relevant work, linking with Maisie's campaign in non-fatal strangulation. I thought what was really important as well is that she noted that much like with online hate and harm, website business models just have very little commercial incentive to address abuse. More clicks drive more traffic, which generates more revenue. And I think that's why we have to be really strong on regulation and enforcement against tech companies. We also looked at legal and policy gaps and how legislation essentially becomes outdated as soon as it comes into force because of the rapid speed of technological change. I think this is why, comprehensive sex education and international tech accountability is so important, because there is this kind of lag. And we also need to understand that tech and regulations, this online harm doesn't end at borders, and that we have to take a collaborative approach, because there are so many loopholes that can be taken otherwise to address it. Another theme I looked at that wasn't linked to online safety, but I thought was really interesting and important, was menstrual health. And this was primarily based on an event by Days for Girls International, who are a non-profit organisation focused on menstrual health and hygiene. And they essentially want to shift how we frame the conversation, that it isn't just about hygiene, but it's about dignity and education and equality. And they've advocated for a holistic approach with menstrual health, essentially challenging the notion that we can solve period poverty by just giving access to menstrual products, and that really we need to do a lot more in terms of education in kind of addressing stigma and taboos. And they also addressed this UK Water Aid survey from 2023 that found that 80% of women said period attitudes held them back at work, fearing leakage, stigma, and having to sometimes rely on toilet paper as a makeshift solution, which led them to create the Period Positive Workplace initiative, which I thought was really interesting. So any organisation can become a period positive workplace. All they have to do to become certified is provide free period products in the bathroom, meet bathroom fertility standards, and inform all of their employees via a formal notice that period products are being provided and will continue to be. And this has been adopted by workplaces in countries across the world, and it's essentially aimed at improving gender equality and reducing stigma. And seeing that menstrual health isn't just a personal issue, but a systemic one, and it impacts so many areas of our lives. I think another thing that I took away from their event was an email that I received a month later. So I essentially, at the end of the event, filled out a Google form. I chose to commit to an action, which was taking steps to implement a period positive workplace and raise awareness of this initiative. And then they told us that we'd be emailed a month later to kind of see how far we'd gone with our action. And I think this was a really simple but effective way of ensuring that action continues but beyond events. I think the excitement events, we can sometimes forget afterwards to continue taking action. And I think this is something that NCW could so easily kind of implement into any of our kind of events that we're running, about making sure people continue to look at their commitments. So I thought that was a really interesting way of kind of approaching this. And kind of overall reflections, I think tech needs to be viewed as a challenge but also an opportunity, and we really need to try and reclaim digital spaces, particularly for young people, and we need to kind of address this both online and offline. So looking at comprehensive sexual education resources to help young people navigate the digital landscape are all really important in this issue. And I think particularly in collaborating internationally, tech and online harm doesn't end at borders, and I think that's a really important kind of statement that we need to take forward. Also, CSW revitalisation was a massive topic of conversation following the conference in a meeting in London in April, and that civil society, we really need to work together, and organisations need to band more to create a unified message for the UK government to take into negotiations, which I think again is a really important thing that we need to be doing. And then I've just listed a few organisations below, so CESE, about sexual exploitation, Days for Girls, and YWCA, as organisations that I found quite interesting and have lots of resources. And I've just included them on this slide. So that includes the storytelling guide, transformative leadership, all of these that I thought were quite useful. I'm also happy to provide detailed reports I've made of the events I attended, and if anyone has any questions or has any information they'd want to share, please let me know. Again, I'm really sorry that I couldn't be doing this live, but I'm really excited to hear from everyone and kind of share what we can do driving forward following CSW as an organisation. Thank you for listening.